People have been asking constantly on my live streams, which cavalry commanders should I invest in? And in fact, the last time I made a video on this topic, it was viewed over 75,000 times. So we're going to revisit this a year later, now that Alexander Nevsky is here in the game, to give you the top 4 cavalry pairs, as well as honorable mentions, talent trees, a commander investment order, equipment that you should use, and heck, what marches I would even recommend for an all cavalry murder ball. But before we begin, allow me to take a moment to thank the sponsor of this video. This is Infinite Galaxy, the sponsor of today's video. And this game is a lot like Rise of Kingdoms, but in space. I would know because I've been playing for over a year now, and I very much enjoy this game. Instead of collecting commanders, you're collecting flagships, and instead of having archers and cavalry and infantry, you build warships in your spaceport, which I am navigating through right now. Instead of buildings in your city, you've got a command center, and you update all of the buildings in your spaceport. This game is very fun, and we are recruiting players to our nebula. Much like a kingdom, we have nebulas in this game, and if I zoom way out, you can see that they are very, very large places with many planets and things to explore. But I'm recruiting you, yes, you, directly to my nebula to play in Smash Squad alliances. There's going to be a link in the description, both to download the game and also to join up in our Discord server. We are in Nebula 13. So if you join us, you can create a new account. You can join us in Nebula 13 and start playing in one of the main Smash Squad alliances right away. There's currently no migration in this game, so we are recruiting players directly to our Nebula. I want you to come play with me in Nebula 13. We have won almost every single time we've queued up for the equivalent of Kingdom versus Kingdom, which is in this game. We've also got a Galaxy Summit, which is like Ark of Osiris, which you can see on my second channel, where I've played that game mode extensively, both the KVK format and also the equivalent of Ark of Osiris. Everything you'll need will be in the description, and I would encourage you to go check it out. And thank you again to Infinite Galaxy for sponsoring this video. Hello, my friends, and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming. I've been playing this game for over 3 years, and I have learned a lot about which cavalry commanders are very good. And now that relics are here and Nevsky is here, and I have spent countless hours playing with all of these commanders in KVK, I have a lot of advice to share about which investments are worth, where your talent points should go, and more. And for those of you that don't know, I always take the time to make timestamps and put them in the description of the video so you can jump to whichever portion of this you're most interested in. Now let's start with the honorable mentions. These are commander combos that don't quite make the cut among the best of the best, but are still really good. Like, you're not embarrassed to field some of these combinations in the Season of Conquest. And let's start with an oldie but goodie, and I need to mention this right away as an honorable mention, as I struggle to find Attila and Takeda. These two commanders paired together will trade really positive in most situations, except big open field brawls where you're just going to take a ton of skill damage and not be dishing out area of effect skill damage back. Attila and Takeda are still a really good city rally for a low power city to kill lots of troops, and this is an open field video, so I'll stick to that. But Attila and Takeda, they're not in my top list, but they are actually really good, and they also work for cheeseburgering. Now, however, we need to get to a honorable mention that many people will likely field, and this is Nevsky with Minamoto. This is a top-tier canyon march that does ridiculous single-target damage, especially once you have the relic on your Minamoto. It gains a fair amount of tankiness, and you can use this in the open field and do a lot of damage to whatever you are fighting. It's got march speed, great damage, and great survivability due to Nevsky offering a ton of defensive stats and capabilities. This is a great march that I would consider fielding if I didn't have access to a lot of the other commanders that I already have. On that note, there are a lot of other cavalry commanders, and this is a top 4 list, the 4 very best cavalry marches in the game. But there are a ton of combos that aren't going to make that list, but are still really, really good, which is why they're on this honorable mention list. All of these combos, by the way, are going to have an XY primary. So that's telling you who the real MVP is in this honorable mention set of pairings. You take an XY primary, And here are the 4 secondaries you could use, and they're all just really good. That includes using William secondary. That is going to give everybody nearby a rage boost when you hit multiple targets. It's also going to give a defense boost, and I say everybody, but it's actually 5 targets. William has some great debuffs, works really well on targets that you are surrounding. Phenomenal pairing. Also, an oldie but goodie that I think is often overlooked and deserves an honorable mention is XY with Chandragupta. Now, Chandragupta is bringing a good amount of sustain-ish. I don't know, ish. He's got 20% health, which is really good. Like, 20% health is actually, I know it sounds weird in a world in which Nevsky has insane amounts of every type of stat, but it's solid for a cavalry commander, and most importantly, reduces the health and defense of the target, which for things you are swarming, especially if you are swarming a garrison, because you're, oh man, going in for the kill, this is a great combo. XY, Chandragupta, and you generate rage so fast that you actually can get the active skill benefit here, 40% damage boost. You can likely still have that active when XY does his next skill cycle, if you have like a Horn of Fury on the pairing. It's a great combo. I would very much consider using it if I had it. And XY is also good with Minamoto. I mean, I told you that Nevsky Minamoto was a lot of single target damage, and XY with Minamoto also does ridiculous amounts of damage. Love the combo. You can use it and have a lot of success. The last pairing I will mention in the honorable mentions within XY is actually going to be another oldie but goodie, and once he got his relic, he became much stronger, and that is Mehmed. Man, you do a lot of area of effect damage with the two of them together. It's kind of gross. XY does AoE damage reduce their defense, and then Mehmed sweeps in here and does a bunch of extra damage to them. And also, by the way, boosts your attack and skill damage, which is kind of nuts on XY, and gives you 20% health with the relic. So, GG. Great combo. Not top tier, but still very good. Which, by the way, brings us to the 4 top tier marches. The best of the best single marches you could bring. And the first single cavalry march you can make, like best of the best, is going to be a Saladin paired with William. This is kind of an old school march, but it's so good. It has to stay on the list, even though you could argue that some of these XY combos I was just sharing will bring more damage. The Saladin-William combo is strong because Saladin is insanely tanky, making it so that you reduce the skill damage you take by 30% and your counterattack damage taken by 20%, and the support tree is a big part of the reason that this all comes together so nicely. I'm running Saladin with William now as a part of 2 cav marches that I can bring to the field because of my equipment. Here is the equipment that I am using, by the way. This is my second set of cav equipment. I know that's kind of insane, but I mention this because Saladin with William is, in my experience, one of the most ignored marches, which is kind of amazing because you get all of that utility and take very little damage. And of course, if they focus you, like, you can get in trouble, but often they won't. Now there are so many more high priority targets that you can actually do a ridiculous amount of work with this combo. And by the way, from a talent standpoint, I have changed my guidance from the original Saladin build I was recommending. I now use this Buckler Shield build pretty much exclusively. Also very important to note that I have only put 2 points into Rejuvenate. That is courtesy of John Wick. We now know that there is a rage cap of 220 per turn. Without getting into all the rationale around how that works, just put 2 points into this and you'll hit the maximum amount of rage that you can generate in 1 turn anyways, based on the amount of rage you get from normal attacks and counter attacks, and also Rejuvenate plus any other things that you have happening on that turn, like Trajan or Joan or William, etc. You could theoretically switch things around and go for a build that prioritizes Rally and Cry. I don't particularly like this because often I find myself, especially in Ark of Osiris, staying in combat for a prolonged period, trying to rage hop from one target to another. So if you find yourself in a lot of really, really short skirmishes, you could go for that bonus damage at the start of an encounter. But Buckler's Shield, giving you 9% reduced counterattack damage taken, actually gives him a meaningful amount of sustain, given that the majority of the damage you're taking is not going to be somebody directly targeting you. It's counterattack damage plus area of effect skill damage, which you are going to reduce with all these other talents and also with the skills that you have. Which brings us, by the way, to the number 3 pairing, which probably will surprise a bunch of you. Although I have been using this in this KVK, many people have not thought of pairing these commanders together. I didn't think of it until the folks in my kingdom brought it to my attention, and that combination is XY with Honda. That's right, XY primary paired with Honda secondary. Now, I have been enjoying this combination, and subsequently I have moved off of this combination in order to put Honda somewhere else to give that march more tankiness, which you may be thinking, what do you mean? Tankiness on Honda? Honda will reduce the normal attack damage you take by 30%, which is a lot, for 57 turns. He also reduces all damage that you take by 5%, but most importantly, the reason that the XY and Honda combo works so well is that XY needs to stay in combat for a long period of time to scale, to ramp up. And the reason is right over here. Every time you use an active skill, your damage for Cavalry is going to get boosted. And once you have this skill maxed, it's getting a 5% boost. So you need to stay in combat for a while, get a lot of skill cycles, and then your damage is boosted by 30%, man. That's really good. Now, when you're in combat for a while, however, you're going to lose a lot of health. And as you lose health, your skill damage is going to scale up from the 4th skill of Honda Tadakatsu. And that's a really cool synergy that I simply did not see. So yes, you will have more troops as well, and that makes it so that you do more damage, certainly. Well, you also take a few more sev wounds, because have more troops. That also means over time you're going to take more sev wounds once you start to get low. You're going to want to refresh this march somewhat frequently if you can to actually get back to that maximum capacity of troops. However, when you're in a prolonged combat and you get low, your skill damage is getting boosted, which with XY just scales insanely well. Also, there's a lot of march speed on here and a lot of attack. You're going to do a lot of damage. Love the combo. I have enjoyed it. I'm currently using Neb with Honda instead, so because that march gets focused a lot, so I wanted to kind of protect it. But to not have this combo in the top 3, I think would be totally remiss. This combo was used extensively in Ark of Osiris League by the league champion. If you overlook this combo because you're not familiar with Honda Tadakatsu, or you didn't expect he would be good in this way, I think that would be a huge mistake. And as an upside here, Honda Tadakatsu is one of the only commanders in the game that I know that can actually, just like Mehmed, I guess that's the other one, and I guess also Isong now that I'm thinking about it, but you can pair them with a bunch of different commanders, and they work insanely well, different troop types as well. So Honda can be paired with Guan and do very well. Honda can be paired with Nebu and do really well, and he can be paired with freaking XY and do really, really well. This is actually a really versatile investment as a secondary commander, which is very powerful. The number 2 combo, however, is now going to take a serious look at Nevsky. And if you were actually bringing only one cavalry march to a murder ball, this is what you would bring. I took my own advice here. This is the one march I used when I had only one cavalry set of gear, and that is Nevsky paired with William. The reason that I am not using XY is that Nevsky is just god tier, man. This commander's completely OP. And the William buffs are, in my opinion, better than the XY area of effect damage and debuffs. Between the two, if you're bringing one march to a murder ball, actually, the Nevsky primary, William secondary is the way that I would go. And it's just undeniable how good the extra defense and rage boost is. It's so strong. And you're not always going to hit multiple targets, but when you do, it's amazing. And if you don't, this is still a very high damage and very high tankiness march that you're going to get a ton of value in the open field. The talent build that I will offer you for Nevsky is going to be this one right here. I'm going with extra rage gen, and this is in part because the versatility tree is not going to do all that much for you. In fact, it's going to do nothing for you. So there's limited options here, and because of how insane the debuff is on Nevsky, I just want to fire that off as fast as I can. Because of how good the buffs are from William, I just want to fire those off as fast as I can. Even if some number of turns I'm going to overrage with Feral Nature, I don't care. Then on the turns where I don't overrage, it's so good. At 10 out of 10. Would recommend. The only other consideration here might be a full cavalry build, which you could do, but I would only recommend this if you find your combats are very, very short. And if they are very short, I would encourage you to try to do more rage hopping. I recognize that the game is sometimes so laggy that that's not possible. And actually, in that regard, you actually can get more value from Rallying Cry. And then also this Clarity build is, I think, perhaps a better way to go if you don't believe in Feral Nature, but you want to pick up some of the benefits still of getting the extra skill damage whenever you use an active skill, and want to get the extra benefits in the Cav tree. You get disarm, you get a little bit of extra march speed between the two builds. They're very similar in the grand scheme of things, but I think you just want to fire off those skills as fast as you can. And on that note, the number one pairing in the game, I think you will be unsurprised to hear, is going to be XY with Nevsky. XY with Nevsky, if you are going to bring one march to like an Altar of Darkness fight, this is the one march that you bring. And if you don't know what an Altar of Darkness fight is, this is a part of the map that only lets you bring one march at a time. And yes, I mean, Nevsky William is really good for helping your friends, but boy, if you just want to wreck the most, this is the one march you bring. It's XY and Nevsky. And it's just the tankiness and damage of Nevsky is completely busted as a secondary to XY. And the amount of damage factor that you're doing on Nevsky to like 2,300, scaled with the 30% all damage over here once you are in combat long enough. Plus, you get the benefit of having had the target's defense reduced before you fire off that skill. It's just such a strong combo, and it's so tanky. It is, I think, one of the more tanky ways you could run XY overall, which, by the way, is why in my murder ball right now, with my 2 Cav marches, I am running XY with Nevsky, and I also run Saladin with William. And those are the 2 Cav marches that I bring to the field. At one point, I was using XY with Honda, and then Nevsky with William. But I found that I really wanted to get more tankiness onto my XY, and Nevsky was the best way to do that. So I threw that Nevsky as the secondary, and that also allowed me to relocate my Honda with Nebu, which is a story for another day, perhaps, as to why that's so good. Here are the talents, by the way, for XY primary with pretty much any secondary you want to run. I do think that there is another build you can use here that's viable, but because XY is reducing your rage requirement, both from his active skill, requiring less rage, and from his 4th skill, generating even more rage, even if you overrage sometimes, is insanely valuable, especially because Feral Nature can help you fire off your active skill before everybody else takes a turn, which means not only are they going to do less damage with their active skill, but also you can apply his AoE defense reduction, which is insane. But if you did want to go a more tanky route, ever so slightly, the Buckler Shield route is a pretty good way to go, and you're ditching Feral Nature Rage Gen and damage in exchange for a little bit of tankiness. Now that I've covered what these best pairs are, I want to talk very briefly about the commander investment order that I would recommend for you, and I want to start by talking about the commanders that are just not at all included in my top list and are not going to be in the investment order at all, and that includes Double C, who, by the way, is great for rallying barb forts, is great for some backfield farmer killing, if that's a thing that people are still doing, and I find myself not really doing much of that at all. It's more utility, but well, maybe not even more utility than Minamoto. It's just not as good as Minamoto. Minamoto has a debuff that makes it so that the target takes 30% all damage. That's insane for 3 seconds. 10% chance that it triggers, but still, that buff is, or I guess that debuff is so good. It just is worlds better than what Double C is doing for you. That's why he doesn't make the list. Jadwiga doesn't make the list. It's just not that great in the open field. Khan also doesn't make the list. He is just way too squishy. He really needs a relic before perhaps he will be relevant again in Season of Conquest open field, in my opinion. And this, by the way, now brings us to the investment order. Skipping all those commanders with your Universal Legendary Commander sculptures, if you're new to the game, you almost certainly need to be maxing Isong. I get that I actually have taken him out of my lineup to try other things, but Isong is still super good for a very, very, very long time, and for most players, will never be retired. Actually, never. So Isong is insane. First max is probably this commander. Alex is still probably on your list, but if you were going to skip him and do Saladin instead, because you're saying like, hey, I'm going to be a Cav player, let's freaking go, That's something you could consider doing. I think most people will still say, but you should probably do Alex. Certainly unlock him. But if you were, again, skipping him, you could invest in Saladin, because Saladin will be one of your endgame cavalry commanders. And then from there, once you get to the Season of Conquest, you need to use the Wheel of Fortune to immediately unlock Nevsky and also William. And then Nevsky is your first invest, and then William is your second. Both of them you could take to 5-5-5-1 as a starting point, but you definitely want to go and max Nevsky, and you could leave William at just 5-5-5-1, and that would be perfectly fine. That is something I will be doing for some amount of time, probably on my restart project, because I think that Nevsky is so good, especially because William is in the game. Nevsky and William are so good together that I think that even though my account for my restart was infantry focused, I'm going to have to ditch that and just put these two in the lineup. It's just that good. After you've done those two commanders, you obviously have a lot of options, but I think XY is also kind of an obvious next choice. Also from the darn Wheel of Fortune, man. So unlock all three of these when you get the opportunity, and then investing in Nevsky, then William, then XY, assuming that you have a fourth commander that you could pair with to make two really good cavalry marches. Or, on the topic of an all-cavalry murder ball, if you wanted to bring 5 cavalry marches to the open field, let's start with XY and Honda Tarakatsu. They pair well together, and I've already talked about that extensively. The next pair you're going to use is Nevsky with Minamoto, and that is just amazing single target damage. It was one of the honorable mentions. The next pair you're going to use, you might not have expected, is Saladin with Mehmed. It's got a lot of tankiness and a lot of AoE damage, actually quite strong in the open field. The next march you're going to use, if you're doing all cavalry, is going to be a commander I unfortunately have not invested in, and that is going to be Chandragupta with William. This is actually an old school combo that people were using a long time ago, and it's still very good. Really good debuffs, really good buffs. We're trying to spread around these commanders that work well as primary commanders, so that you can take advantage of commanders like Mehmed or Minamoto as secondary. And then the final combo, which you might not have expected, is actually going to be Trajan and Mulan. And Trajan and Mulan are really, really good. But in an all skill damage murder ball, like the one I've described, the utility these are going to bring you is actually astronomical, making it so that when they focus down your XY, you're going to be giving yourself 20% defense and health and 30% march speed if you need to run away from the Mulan, plus the bonus skill damage from Trajan, plus the two of them together make the target take more all damage from their passive skills. So these all are going to stack up. Even with Minamoto's, it will stack. That is the 5-march murder ball. XY Honda, Nevsky Minamoto, Saladin Mehmed, Chandragupta William, and Trajan with Mulan. As far as your equipment goes for cavalry, I think that the ultimate best set you can possibly make looks like this. You're going to have a ring and a horn. Those two are insane. For your accessories, that's going to take a very long time to do. So start with epic accessories, or even just a blue march speed accessory. I get it. We all start there. However, the health pieces are the most important, and that is largely because of the way that stats scale in this game. The lower a stat is, the more value you get from getting more of that stat. And the more of a stat you have, the less value you get from getting more of that stat. So in most cases, because of the way Season of Conquest technology currently works, health is just insanely good. So you use the 2-piece cavalry set bonus, boots and chest. That also, by the way, gives you 3% more troop health. And then Ash of the Dawn for your pants and Navarre's Control for your gloves. I am using the KVK helmet, which is really good, but also I am using the KVK sword. I have the intention of eventually critting this sword and getting the special talent. So in the meantime, as far as your prioritization for upgrades goes, actually, this is one of the last things you would work on is a weapon. You could have a Talented Heart of the Saint, which is epic, and that will last you a very, 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 very long time. Also, you can use the epic Talented Cav Pants, which I used to use for quite a while, and that is also giving you health, 10.5% health once you get the special talents on it, which is very similar to the base level of Ash of the Dawn, which is 12% health. In fact, even the gloves you could leave at Epic for a very long time. That is because the Epic gloves is at Sufferance. I think that's what it's called, right? It's giving you 4% health and 4% attack when you have it talented. So that's really good. So as far as priority for upgrading to these different pieces, I think that chest and boots are really good starting points, and also helmet. And probably boots and helmet are the very first things you do, because those are places where you're replacing attack with health. And because Cavalry get focused a lot, I think that is a very strong choice. And this, by the way, is the other Cavalry set that I'm running. I am using Epics, as I was describing here, for the accessories. And then also, instead of using those KVK items, which are much harder to obtain, I have gone with a Rifle of the Hellish Wasteland and also the set helmet. So now I have the 4-piece bonus with the extra counterattack damage. I think that going for that weapon was something that I could have either done or not done. However, I went that route because I do intend to talent this. And once that is talented, it will actually be more stats than my KVK sword. And I will almost certainly talent this weapon before I have a talented sword. So I think the rifle is something I went with because I'm going for the talent. Otherwise, just go with a Heart of the Saint, and you probably can stop there, and that'll just be really good. If this video has helped you at all in your journey toward picking which Cavalry marches to invest in, do me a huge favor and throw a like on the video and consider subscribing. I put a lot of time and effort into figuring out which really are the best commander investments in the game, and I think for Cavalry, these are top tier, and I will be eager for your recommendations down below in the comments. If there is anything that I missed, definitely let me know. I mean, okay, a couple more honorable mentions while I have Saladin on the screen. Saladin Joan is a shockingly good way to use Saladin if you wanted to bring Joan of Arc to the field. Saladin Takeda's pretty okay. But these are marches that have sort of, they're fading out. Saladin Esong, Saladin Ethel, those are actually also, those should have been in the honorable mention section. But they're so outclassed. I mean, shockingly outclassed by the other honorable mentions like Nevsky and Mina or XY William. That yeah, okay. They're stepping stones, but not end states. And until next time, you have fun smashing the kingdom, and check the link in the description to go check out Infinite Galaxy and to play in my Nebula. Let's go.